For 1 year I believed my relationship was real, until I learned I was caught between two people who never let go. Then the man I loved looked at me and said I ruined his life. I remember exactly where I was standing when those words landed on me, not because the place mattered, but because my body froze like it needed something solid to remember the moment by. For a year I had loved him in a way that was quiet and honest. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady. I loved him in the everyday ways. Saving his messages, waiting for his calls, defending him when people questioned his intentions, believing him when he said I was the only one. When we met it felt simple. He was attentive, curious about me. He asked questions about my childhood, my fears, the things that made me laugh when I was alone. He made me feel chosen. There was no sign that I was walking into something unfinished, no warning label, no shadow following him around. If I noticed anything strange back then I ignored it, because when you love someone you learn how to explain things away. Sometimes he would go quiet when I mentioned family gatherings. Especially when my cousin's name came up. I thought it was coincidence. I thought maybe he was just tired. My cousin and I were close, but not the kind of close where you share every detail of your life. She was older, more confident, the kind of person people noticed when she walked into a room. I never once imagined her in the same sentence as my boyfriend, not in that way, not ever. They acted normal, too normal. If they spoke it was brief, polite, almost distant. I remember thinking it was nice that there was no awkwardness. Now when I look back I realize how carefully they performed that distance. The relationship itself felt real to me. We argued about normal things, time, expectations, future plans. I thought the tension came from life, from stress, from misunderstandings. There were moments when he would pull away emotionally, like he was somewhere else even while sitting next to me. I would ask him what was wrong. He would say nothing, or say he felt pressured, or say I was overthinking. So I tried harder. I became softer, more understanding, more patient. I believed love meant adjusting yourself until the other person feels comfortable, even if it slowly erased you. There was one night that keeps replaying in my mind. We were talking about the future, not marriage, just where life was heading. I told him I wanted stability, honesty, someone who would stand by me without making me feel like a burden. He looked at me for a long time, long enough to make me nervous. Then he said something that felt off, but I could not explain why. He said sometimes love comes with consequences. I laughed it off. I thought he was being philosophical, deep. I did not know he was confessing without actually telling the truth. The breakup did not come suddenly. It came slowly, like something dying quietly. He became distant. I became anxious. Every conversation felt heavier. When it finally ended it was not gentle. There was no mutual understanding, no respect for what we had. Instead there was anger, blame, words that felt rehearsed. He told me I had ruined his peace, that I was the reason his past had fallen apart, that loving me had cost him something he never fully recovered from. I remember staring at him wondering what past he was talking about, what relationship I had somehow destroyed without knowing it existed. I asked him to explain. He refused. He said I would not understand. That sentence broke something in me, because I realized he had been deciding my place in his story without ever letting me read the script. I left that conversation confused, ashamed, carrying guilt that did not belong to me. For weeks I replayed every moment of our relationship, looking for the mistake that made me deserve those words. I blamed myself for being too emotional, too attached, too hopeful. What I did not know yet was that the truth was still waiting, quiet, patient, and much closer to me than I could imagine. I did not know that the love I thought was mine had started long before me, and never truly ended. After the breakup I lived in a strange in-between space, not fully heartbroken, not fully angry, just confused in a way that makes your chest feel tight even when you are doing normal things. People around me kept saying the same lines. Maybe it was not meant to be. Time will heal. You deserve better. I nodded. I smiled. I pretended those words were landing somewhere inside me. But at night when everything went quiet my mind would not stop. I kept hearing his voice telling me I ruined his life. Not just once, over and over. I needed to understand what he meant. Because if I really had destroyed something without knowing it then I needed to face it. So I started looking back. Not in a dramatic way, just carefully. I noticed patterns I had ignored, moments that felt small back then but heavy now, like how he always changed the subject when his past relationships came up, how he never told me how his last serious relationship ended, how he would say things like some people are impossible to forget but still look directly at me while saying it. I told myself everyone has history, everyone has wounds. Still something did not sit right. The first crack in the truth came from a place I did not expect, a casual conversation, a family gathering. We were sitting around talking about weddings. Someone mentioned my cousin's name, and another relative laughed and said it was funny how life brings people back together. I asked what they meant. My voice was calm, too calm. They looked at me strangely, like I had missed something obvious. You did not know they dated. They said it casually, like it was old news, like it was not about to change the shape of my entire past year. I felt my face go hot. I asked who, even though I already knew. They said his name. The room did not spin. There was no dramatic reaction, just a deep heavy silence inside my body. I excused myself. Went somewhere quiet, sat down and stared at nothing. My cousin, my boyfriend, they had a history, not a small one, not a distant one. They dated seriously, long before I came into the picture, and according to everyone it had ended badly. Suddenly everything made sense, and at the same time nothing did. I felt stupid, not because I trusted them, but because I never imagined I needed to ask. Who thinks to ask their boyfriend if he once loved their cousin? I replayed every interaction between them, every polite hello, every forced distance. It was not distance, it was control. They knew, they both knew, from the moment he and I started dating, and no one told me. I reached out to him. Not angrily, not accusing, I just asked one question: did you ever date my cousin? There was a long pause, longer than any pause should be for a yes or no question. Then he said it did not matter, that it was in the past, that I should not dig into things that were already over. That sentence hurt more than the truth, because it confirmed everything. I asked him why he never told me, why he let me walk into this without a warning. He said he did not want to complicate things, that he chose me. That bringing up the past would only create problems, but the past had already created problems. He just made sure I was the only one unaware of them. I asked him one more thing: was I the reason you and her broke up? This time there was no pause. He said yes. He said when he started developing feelings for me things between them became messy, that my presence made everything harder, that I represented a choice he was not ready to make. I could feel my chest tighten, because I realized what he had done. He let me believe I was chosen, while quietly resenting me for forcing him to choose. I told him that was unfair, that I never knew, that I never asked him to leave anyone for me. He said intention does not change impact, and that sentence felt like a knife. Because suddenly I was carrying blame for a story I never agreed to be part of. I reached out to my cousin next, not to accuse, just to understand. She replied politely, too politely. She said yes, they had dated, yes it was serious, yes it ended around the time he and I started talking. She said she assumed he had told me. That assumption hurt more than if she had admitted the truth, because it placed the responsibility back on him, and yet she still never told me. She said life is complicated, that feelings overlap, that no one meant to hurt anyone, but I had been hurt, deeply, quietly, completely, and suddenly I realized something else: they had both moved on from their guilt, while I was still trying to understand why I felt so broken. The blame he placed on me during the breakup was never about me, it was about his unresolved feelings, his inability to sit with his own choices. I was not the reason their relationship failed, I was the excuse he used to avoid facing the truth. That realization did not bring relief, it brought anger. Because I lost a year of my life loving someone who never gave me the full truth, who let me bond with him while hiding a past tied directly to my own family. Trust once broken does not shatter loudly, it cracks quietly, and spreads into everything. Family gatherings became uncomfortable, conversations felt layered, nothing was innocent anymore, and still, I did not know the worst part yet. I did not know that this was not the end of their story, that it was only the pause before something far more painful. I thought the truth was behind me, but it was actually waiting to step forward and prove that the betrayal had never really stopped after everything came out. I thought the worst part was knowing I was wrong. Knowing is painful, but being blamed for something you never chose is worse. Once the truth surfaced, his tone changed. Not softer, not apologetic, sharper, defensive. It was like the moment I understood the full picture, he needed me to carry the weight of it. He started rewriting our story, not openly, not honestly, but subtly. He said things like, if you had not come into my life things would have been different. If you had given me more space I would not have felt trapped. If you understood me better none of this would have happened. Every sentence began with if you, and I let it happen. Because part of me still loved him, and part of me still wanted peace. I tried to explain that I never knew, that I never asked him to leave her, that I never wanted to be between anyone. He said that does not change what happened, that my presence alone was enough. That sentence haunted me, because how do you argue with being told your existence caused damage? He said when he looked at me he was reminded of everything he lost, that loving me came with guilt, that he could never be fully happy because of what he gave up. I asked him why he stayed then, why he continued the relationship for a full year. He said because he hoped it would go away, that his feelings for her would fade, that time would fix it, but time did not fix it, it buried it, and I was the one standing on top of it without knowing what was underneath. He told me during the breakup that he felt relieved, relieved to finally stop pretending, relieved to stop choosing. I remember thinking how cruel that sounded. Relief for him, devastation for me. He said I should understand, that I should be mature about it, that these things happen, but there is something deeply unfair about being asked to be mature about someone else's dishonesty. I started questioning myself, my reactions, my emotions. I wondered if I was too sensitive, if I was overreacting, if maybe I really had caused harm simply by loving someone who was not free. That kind of thinking messes with you. You stop trusting your instincts, you start shrinking your feelings, you apologize for things you never did. I apologized to him more than once, not because I believed I was wrong, but because I wanted the pain to stop. I told him I was sorry if I hurt him, sorry if I complicated his life, sorry if my presence made things worse. He accepted those apologies, easily. That should have been my sign. The conversations became colder, more distant. It felt like I was talking to someone who had already emotionally left. Someone who was preparing himself for a future where I did not exist. Every time my cousin's name came up he became tense, defensive. He said I should not hold it against her, that she had done nothing wrong, that their story was unfinished long before I arrived. That sentence stayed with me, unfinished. I realized then that I had never been the main story, I was the interruption. He never once asked how I felt, what it was like for me to discover this, how it affected my relationship with my family. Instead he focused on his loss, his regret, his confusion, and slowly the love I felt began to change. It did not disappear, it hardened. I started seeing him differently. Not as someone caught in a difficult situation, but as someone who made choices and then blamed others for the consequences. I saw how easily he shifted responsibility, how quickly he painted himself as the victim, and I wondered how long he had been doing that, not just with me, but with her. One day during an argument he said something that finally broke whatever was left. He said maybe if you had not been there I would be married by now. The words hit me hard, not because of the marriage, but because of the certainty, because in that moment I understood something clearly. He had already decided where his heart belonged, he was just waiting for his life to catch up. I stopped responding after that, not dramatically, not loudly, I just went quiet, and that silence did something to him. It unsettled him. He accused me of being cold, of acting distant, of changing. But I was not changing, I was waking up. I was realizing that love should not feel like a constant apology, that honesty should not come only after damage is done. I stepped back, from him, from the conversations, from the emotional chaos. I focused on myself, on healing, on repairing the parts of me that had been bent trying to fit into his unresolved past. I thought that was the end, that the story had finally reached its painful conclusion. I was wrong. Because just when I started finding my balance, just when I began to believe that maybe I could move forward, life revealed the final truth. The one that made everything he said before feel intentional, and it came in the form of an announcement I never expected. I found out the truth on an ordinary day. That is the cruel part. Nothing felt dramatic until suddenly everything was. I was scrolling without thinking, just letting time pass, trying to feel normal again. Then I saw it, a picture, a smile I recognized too well, standing next to someone I never expected to see her with, my cousin, and him. They were not hiding, they were not careful, they looked happy, comfortable, like people who had returned to something familiar. My hand started shaking, not violently, just enough to tell me my body understood the truth before my mind could catch up. It was not an engagement post, not yet, but it did not need to be. The way they stood close, the way his hand rested on her arm, the way her smile reached her eyes. This was not new, this was resumed. Everything he said suddenly rearranged itself in my head, all the blame, all the resentment, all the guilt he placed on me. It was never about closure, it was about preparation. He was detaching from me while reattaching to her. I felt embarrassed, not because of what they did, but because I once defended him, I once believed his confusion was pain. I realized then that clarity does not always come with honesty, sometimes it comes with proof. I did not message him, I did not call. I sat with the realization quietly, letting it move through me. The anger came later, not explosive, but deep. I thought about every time he made me feel like a burden, every moment he said he felt trapped, every sentence where he implied I was the reason his life went off track. He had been positioning himself as the victim, while actively choosing a future without me, and the worst part, he knew how close she was to me. He knew what this would do, they both did. I finally reached out, not to ask why, but to say one thing. I told him I knew, that I had seen the pictures, that I understood now. He replied quickly, too quickly. He said it was not what it looked like, that things just happened. That feelings returned naturally, that word, naturally, as if betrayal is a force of nature, as if honesty is optional. I asked him one question, when were you going to tell me? There was no answer. That silence told me everything. Later that week the announcement came, not directly, not personally, through family, through whispers, through congratulatory messages I was not meant to see. They were getting married. I felt something collapse inside me, not because I wanted him back, but because I finally understood how little my pain had mattered. They framed it as destiny, as timing, as love finding its way back. No one mentioned the year I spent loving someone who was emotionally unavailable. No one mentioned the blame I carried, no one mentioned the truth that was hidden. I was expected to be mature, to be quiet, to accept it. I was expected to attend events, to smile, to pretend this was not layered with betrayal, and I almost did, because women are taught to swallow pain for the sake of peace, especially when family is involved. But something inside me had changed. I was no longer confused, I was clear. Clear that I had been used as a bridge, clear that my love was real even if his was divided, clear that I was not the villain in their story. I stopped engaging, stopped explaining. stopped defending myself. I let people believe whatever version made them comfortable. Healing does not always look like confrontation, sometimes it looks like walking away with your dignity intact. Still, there was one final moment that sealed everything for me. It happened at a family gathering, the first time I saw them together as a couple. He avoided my eyes, she smiled politely, and in that moment I realized something important. They were at peace, because I had already carried the chaos for all of us, and that realization, as painful as it was, set me free, because the story was no longer about them, it was about what I survived, what I learned, and what I would never accept again. When the wedding date was finalized, it did not arrive like a shock. It arrived like confirmation. By then I was no longer crying every night, I was no longer replaying conversations. I had reached that quiet stage where pain stops screaming and starts teaching. People around me thought I was strong. They said I handled it well. What they did not see was the work it took to stand upright while something inside me was still bruised. The invitation did not come directly to me. It came through family, through assumption, through expectation, as if my presence was a given, as if my silence meant acceptance. I remember holding that moment in my hands, not the card, but the idea of it, me sitting there, watching them promise forever, after I had already lived through their unfinished past. I imagined it, the room, the smiles, the music, and I knew I could not do it, not because I was bitter, not because I was weak, but because healing does not mean volunteering yourself for pain. So I chose myself. I declined quietly, without explanation, without drama. Some people understood, some did not. I let them misunderstand. On the day of the wedding I did not stay home crying, I did not stalk social media. I did not ask for updates. I went somewhere calm, somewhere quiet. I sat with myself and thought about the girl I had been a year ago, the one who believed love always comes with honesty, the one who trusted without fear. I felt sad for her, but I also felt proud, because she loved fully, even when the outcome was unfair. That kind of love is not a mistake, it is proof of depth. I thought about him, not with longing, but with clarity. I realized he did not choose my cousin over me. He chose familiarity over accountability. He chose the story that required less explanation, less honesty, less courage, and that choice told me everything I needed to know. I no longer wondered what I did wrong. I no longer carried guilt. I understood that I was not the reason their relationship failed. And I was not the reason it restarted. I was simply the space in between, the lesson they never acknowledged. Over time the anger faded, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I rebuilt my relationship with myself, with boundaries, with trust, with strength. Family gatherings stopped feeling heavy, because I stopped carrying what was never mine. When people brought it up I did not explain. I did not justify. I simply said I wished them well, and I meant it, not romantically, not emotionally, but genuinely, because wishing them well did not cost me my self-respect. The truth is, not every story ends with closure, some end with clarity, and clarity is powerful. I learned that love should never require you to disappear, that honesty delayed is still dishonesty, that being chosen should not come with guilt. Most importantly, I learned this: if someone can make you feel responsible for their unfinished past, they are not ready to build a future with you. Today when I look back I do not feel like the girl who was left behind, I feel like the woman who walked away just in time. Their wedding was not the ending of my story, it was the ending of a chapter that taught me what I will never accept again. And if you are listening to this and recognize yourself in any part of it, know this: you were not the problem, you were the truth they were not ready to face. Sometimes losing people is not loss, it is release.